Welcome to the Call to Freedom. It is Friday, April the 19th, 2019, and we are live. I am your host, as always, Aria DiMezzo, who composed the music you are listening to right now. You can find that at soundcloud.com/Aria DiMezzo. And I'm joined in the studio today by
Michael Hampton from BitcoinHistory.com.
And the chat is already going, asking whether or not, the usual. Am I a trap? That sort of thing.
Are you a trap? No.
No, I think to be a trap, I would have to, attempt to hide the fact that I'm trans.
Yeah, you have to be deceptive about it.
Yeah, I'm pretty upfront about that, I think people will find. So, anyway, the Mueller report has been in the news throughout most of the last week. Apparently, it was released in stages, is what I'm gathering about this entire debacle.
Apparently.
And Republicans, of course, are hailing it as just this definitive destruction of this Trump-Russia conspiracy theory, while Democrats seem to be just kind of ignoring it entirely, with people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez saying that, it's just time to impeach him. Let's just impeach the guy.
Yeah, we've got enough here to impeach him.
So the lengthy analysis of this comes from Glenn Greenwald of The Intercept, saying that it was a two-pronged conspiracy theory, and it's dominated U.S. political discourse for almost 3 years, pretty much since Trump won the presidency.
Yeah, this was like spring 2017 all this started. So it's been going on since he took office.
That he and his family and his campaign conspired or coordinated with Russia to interfere in the 2016 election. Which I think is interesting. If you're in the election and campaigning as part of that election, you are by definition interfering with that election because you're running in it. That's interfering with the results that would otherwise be.
Yeah, I suppose if you look at it that way.
So I think it's pretty definitive that Donald Trump interfered in the 2016 presidential election.
Well, sure he did. On his own behalf. By himself.
And his family interfered. And his campaign interfered. So I don't think any of that is a surprising revelation, but apparently to some people it is.
Yeah.
And that Trump is beholden to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Russian dictator would be more appropriate, I would think.
Probably closer to the truth.
And according to Glenn Greenwald, it was not merely rejected today by the final report of Special Counsel Robert Mueller. It was obliterated in an undeniable and definitive manner. Now, parts of it certainly were obliterated, but the key parts of it, the key allegations, are actually not as definitive as one would like. We've been asked whether we like Trump. I am not a fan of any president, past or future, because they're all the same. I don't see much of a distinction between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, except one purportedly has a vagina.
Yeah, well, Hillary's probably a little better spoken. But
that is the issue people have with Trump, is that, he uses little words. He talks at a fifth grade reading level or whatever.
But he's saying the same things.
Yeah, he's saying exactly the same things. The difference between them was that Trump targeted his ire at China, while Hillary was pretty clear in her desire for war with Russia.
Oh, yeah, she wanted the Cold War back. She wanted it to go hot. So,
yeah. The key fact is this, and again, this is according to Glenn Greenwald, Mueller, contrary to weeks of false media claims, years of false media claims, did not merely issue a narrow, cramped, legalistic finding that there was insufficient evidence to indict Trump associates for conspiring with Russia and then proving their guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. That would have been devastating enough to those who spent the last 2 years or more misleading people to believe that conspiracy convictions of Trump's closest aides and family members were inevitable. And we've talked about that here on the show repeatedly, because the media has absolutely managed to work this Russian conspiracy, stated matter-of-factly, into all sorts of articles, whether it was related or not.
And they still are.
Are they? I've not read anything outside of this so far today. But the mandate for Mueller was much broader than that, to state what did or did not happen. And according to The Intercept, that's precisely what he did. In addition to concluding that evidence was insufficient to charge any American with crimes relating to Russian election interference, Mueller also stated emphatically in numerous instances that there was no evidence, not merely that there was insufficient evidence, that key prongs of this 3-year-old conspiracy theory actually happened. As Mueller himself put it, in some instances, the report points out the absence of evidence or conflicts in the evidence about a particular fact or event. Now, this is not surprising. Those who have been watching this skeptically and rationally have noticed a distinct lack of evidence regarding Russia collusion. With regard to Facebook ads and Twitter posts from the Russia-based Internet Research Agency, for example, Mueller could not have been more blunt. The investigation did not identify evidence that any U.S. persons knowingly or intentionally coordinated with the IRA's interference operation. And again, I don't like the characterization of this as interference, because we, the American people in this democratic republic that we have set up, have the right to vote for whoever we want on whatever basis we want, being influenced by whatever sources we want.
Yeah, well, apparently by interference, they mean that there was this Russian troll farm that got on Twitter and had lots of fake Twitter accounts.
Yes, but that's not interference. That's influence. That's somebody else saying, hey, you need to know this, or we believe this to be true, and we want to influence you with it. It doesn't matter to me whether it's an American saying that, whether it's an Israeli saying that, or an Iranian or a Russian saying that. To me, it's the evidence that matters, and it's completely irrelevant who brings it. That sort of mindset that the left is propagating about this is that your vote is only valid if you are influenced by people on this pre-approved list that we've compiled. Mm-hmm. And Russia is not on that list. So if you vote for Trump because of what you learned or what you were persuaded to believe by Russian trolls, then your vote doesn't count.
Yeah, and you are a victim of Russian interference in the election.
But again, that's the deceit. It's not interference in the election that they're talking about, and it never has been. That's just a euphemism. What their ire is aimed at is that, Americans were influenced by other people. Americans voted for reasons that they disapprove of. Russians didn't interfere with the election. There were no Diebold machines being hacked as far as we know.
Nope.
And all of the vote checks that we've done proved to be valid so far, or relatively valid, within reasonable margins of error.
Obviously, you've got your little isolated instances of double voting here and there, but
there was no coordinated effort to actually change the outcome of the election results. Instead, what happened was that American voters were influenced, not the election. The election was entirely influenced by American voters, by people literally going out there and voting. It's not about election interference at all. It's about voter interference. It's about their attempt to control what information you have access to on the basis of who provides that information. And we see that again in regard to WikiLeaks and Julian Assange and their allegation that, we should totally disregard everything about the DNC leaks because it was Russia who provided those to Assange.
Uh-huh.
But ultimately, it doesn't matter what the source of the information is. It's the information that matters. And you, as an American, you have the right to believe whatever you want to believe.
No matter how wrong it is.
No matter how wrong it is, and no matter who led you to believe it. It doesn't matter if it was the pastor at your Southern Baptist church or if it was some Russian troll on the internet. If you believe it, you believe it. You do not have to justify that to anyone.
And at the same time, it's your responsibility to make sure that you're not believing crap.
I don't know if I would go that far. Plenty of people believe crap, and it's not a problem.
You can't blame that on someone else.
Well, to an extent they can, but they don't believe it to be crap. That's a judgment assessment that we're making based on our own beliefs, which may in fact be crap. So it's sort of each side calling the other's beliefs crap, which is why I would say that, you don't have that responsibility because it's a judgment call made by other people, and they say the same thing about our beliefs. This is a call to freedom. We're going to get more into the Mueller report, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back. This is the Call to Freedom. As always, you're invited to give us a call. That number is 603-283-6160. Again, that's 603-283-6160. Or if you prefer clearer quality, you can use the Discord call-in lines, which you can find at discord.lrn.fm. So we've been talking about the Mueller report and how Republicans are, in some cases rightly, but in other cases wrongly, hailing it as, the complete obliteration of the Russiagate conspiracy theory. And I can't believe I just said Russiagate.
Oh.
I hate myself so much for that. But that's what they're calling it, because everything is gate.
Everything is a gate. We don't know why.
So anyway, as we were talking about, their allegation isn't anything regarding the actual election process. That's a euphemism that they're using because they don't want to actually say what their real issue is. And their real issue is that some Americans may or may not have been influenced to vote for Trump for reasons that they disapprove of. And therefore, their votes shouldn't count.
That's what this comes down to. If you believe the stuff you read on Twitter and voted for Trump, you don't count.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're actually getting at. But of course, they don't have the courage to actually stand up and say that. So instead, they've been perpetuating this myth for the better part of 2 years at least, perhaps 3, because they don't want the American people to be influenced by things that they don't control. They even I think it went defunct very quickly, but they created a website cataloging fake news. It was supposed to be decentralized. I expected to see anarchistgmail.com on there because at the time it was a pretty popular site. I mean, it was popular enough that I ended up on the Call to Freedom because of what I was writing there. It never did, funnily enough. But I don't remember now what the website was actually called, but it was basically just a list of websites that the left didn't like. So to get a further sense for how definitive the report's rejection is of the key elements, consider Mueller's discussion of efforts by George Papadopoulos, Joseph Misford, and 2 Russian nationals, whereby they tried to, quote, arrange a meeting between the campaign and Russian officials to talk about how these 2 sides could work together to disseminate information about Hillary Clinton. As Mueller puts it, no meeting took place. And again, even if it did, who cares? If there is information about Hillary Clinton that is damaging enough that a release of it by Russians or the Trump campaign
or anybody,
could damage her standing, I want to know that information. I think that we, the American people, have the right to that information, regardless of who brings it to us. So several of the media's most breathless and hyped bombshells were dismissed completely. Regarding various Trump officials' 2016 meetings with a Russian ambassador, Mueller said they were brief, public, and non-substantive. Concerning the much-hyped change to GOP platform regarding Ukraine, Mueller wrote that the evidence does not establish that one campaign official efforts to dilute a portion of the Republican platform was undertaken at the behest of candidate Trump or Russia. Now, I don't know what they're referring to because the part of the 2016 change to the GOP platform that I was interested in was Mike Pence's responsibility for adding conversion therapy as I think they described it as a humane method of dealing with LGBT people.
No, there's nothing humane about that.
No, so they enshrined conversion therapy at the 2016 GOP thing. And I think rather than focusing on this Russia crap, the Democrats would probably serve their interests better by calling attention to that.
Yeah, well, I seem to recall they did, but it really didn't go very far in the news.
I don't recall whether or not they did. I only remember seeing it mentioned offhandedly for about 2 days before it went right back to Russia. So Mueller also characterized a widely hyped meeting between then Senator Jeff Sessions and Kislyak as one that did not include any more than the passing of information than a passing mention of the presidential campaign. Now, what I find, I guess, disturbing about this would be the way the Republicans are taking this and holding it up as definitive, even though that statement is 100% contingent upon Jeff Sessions' evidence about that meeting. So he basically said, no, I didn't give them. I mentioned the presidential campaign in passing, and Mueller had no evidence to go on. I'm sure it wasn't recorded, and if it was, we certainly haven't heard it.
There were certainly other people there, aides and whatnot. So
sure.
Who knows? He might have actually talked to the Russian ambassador.
He may very well have.
The details may very well be in the report.
Regarding one of the most cited pieces of evidence by Trump or Russian conspiracists, that Russia tried once Trump was nominated to shape his foreign policy posture toward Russia, Mueller concluded that there is simply no evidence to support it. The office did not identify evidence in any interactions of coordination between the campaign and the Russian government.
That's pretty definitive.
It is. But we have softened a bit on Russia. I'm not surprised by that. I mean, Trump and Putin have quite a lot in common as far as their general behaviors and mentality and the thuggishness. I mean, he's one of those entitled white dudes who's all about strength and all of that, you know?
Right.
He would obviously get along well with a former KGB agent.
Oh, yeah.
Trump himself, I'm sure, he reminds me a lot of Himmler, really, in that he was never in the military, but he wants to be seen in that same sort of perspective. And that's not to say Trump is a Nazi. Let me be clear. I don't think that Donald Trump is a Nazi.
He's probably not, but
when I think about, people who really wish they had been part of the military indoctrination program, they could have become military heroes on their strength and virtue and all of that. Himmler is the guy who comes to mind. In other crucial areas, Mueller did not go as far as to say that his investigation did not identify evidence, but nonetheless concluded that his 22-month investigation did not establish. Good God, this guy is the worst writer I have ever seen. How is he popular? Not only did he say did not go so far as, that's grammatically incorrect, and you learned that in like the third grade. It's didn't go as far as. You don't go so far as. But then he goes on with this sentence, just is totally convoluted. I have it right in front of me, and I don't fully process it. Thanks for nothing, Glenn Greenwald. Regarding alleged involvement by Trump officials or family members in the Russian hacks, for example, Mueller explained the investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired. Okay, so yeah, there was no evidence that Trump conspired with the Russians. That's a horse that it really is not worth beating at this point. Another thing I don't like about this article, in fact, is how Glenn Greenwald just keeps focusing on that. So much so that he's including excerpts of the report and highlighting those. Hey, we're not... Guy on D-Live, Haskell Warrior, we are not alleging that there was any Russian collusion. In fact, we've been saying since the whole thing began that it's BS being propagated by the left. This is the Call to Freedom. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back. This is the Call to Freedom and the Rational Review News Digest, located at rationalreview.com, is the Freedom Movement's daily news digest, aggregating stories from all over the internet, local, national, and international, that are of interest to libertarians and liberty-minded people. They include podcasts, videos, blogs, and news articles, and are now a source for people to receive the Call to Freedom's podcasts. So be sure to check them out at rationalreview.com to stay up to date on all the happenings in the wider world. And speaking of Call to Freedom's podcast, we have finally been approved by Apple and can be found on the iTunes web store via the link that you can find at patreon.com/call-to-freedom.
Well, that took long enough.
It did. Well, most of the reason it took long enough was because I just couldn't be bothered to do it. But once I did, I submitted it, and they were like, "Hey, no, this looks like your first ever podcast."
Are you testing?
Yeah, are you testing? Let us know when you upload your first episode. So I went to the RSS feed, and I was like, "Yep, there's 49 uploaded episodes here just from the past 3 months since we moved to Podbean. So I don't know what you people are talking about. So I said that, or something a bit more diplomatic than that. And they respond very quickly. They're like, oh, well, see, you missed these fields here, which are located separately there on Podbean. So you'll have to find those and fill them out. So I did that and resubmitted, and they finally got back to us today. A few hours ago, in fact. Also, interesting news, totally unrelated to any of that. It's just what I've been up to today. And the reason I left the house 2.5 hours ago, I had to go buy Planned Parenthood because I ran out of my estrogen and spironolactone. And these people are awesome, right? I love Planned Parenthood. And it's not because they do abortions or anything like that. It's just because they're really freaking friendly. And I had no appointment or anything like that. I tried calling, but because I'm currently using Google Hangouts to make my calls, I had no callback number. And they wanted me to leave a message. So I was like, I'll just go there. So they saw me as soon as I walked into the door without an appointment. They brought me to the back. And I sat down with the doctor there, and I have been upped to 300 milligrams of spironolactone, which, as I understand it, is 50% more than the maximum dosage people are supposed to take.
Wow.
Yeah, and apparently it's because even at 200 milligrams of spironolactone, my testosterone levels are too high. Still in normal ranges after taking 8 milligrams of estrogen, and 200 milligrams of spironolactone, still having normal ranges of testosterone. So my little jewels are working hard, apparently.
Working overtime.
Yeah. So that's going to be interesting for the next few days as I adjust to a new hormonal body chemistry. Not looking forward to that. And of course, that's pretty much the only interesting stuff going on. That and the podcast, which, as I said, is now available finally on iTunes. So I look forward to seeing the bump in the statistics. We're actually doing really, really well. We're gaining about 150% of listeners consistently each week, which if it continues along that trajectory, then 6 months from now we'll be at, 750 downloads per day.
Yeah.
Which would just be staggering.
I'd love to see that.
Me too. I am going to start, I think, and I've got you here in the studio, so I guess we can discuss that at a break. Putting Aria Uncensored on a separate channel, I don't think would be effective. Well, I mean, it would be relatively effective, sure. I would like to put it on a different section of the Podbean website, so I only have to pay for one thing a month. Technically, Aria Uncensored is not related to Call to Freedom. I just happen to do both shows. And in a very roundabout way, it would qualify as using Call to Freedom funds to, what's the word I'm looking for, to support a different show.
Right.
Well, we can discuss.
Is the show really that different, though?
It is. I mean, it doesn't have you on it. It doesn't have Chris on it. You've been invited to be on it. And if
it has you on it.
Yeah, but it's nothing.
What are you talking about?
It is nothing like Call to Freedom, though. I'm not going to drink anymore for Aria Uncensored, at least not for a while. I'm instead going to do the next episode, I think. I'm trying to get Derek J. Freeman to join me for it because he's a really interesting character. We've never sat down to do a show together, so what better time to do that than Aria Uncensored, which, for those who have never seen it, airs here on DLive and Twitch and YouTube at 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I do the show topless. So that's a lot of fun. And the previous 2 episodes, I was increasingly drunk throughout them. They start off the rails, and they proceed to be just absolute train wrecks. So, highly worth watching, in my opinion. So, if Derek J. isn't going to join me for the next episode of Aria Uncensored, oh my God, yeah, I'll get to that in the moment, Packet Sniffer. I've decided I'm going to do the next episode on shrooms, which is which is going to be a bit better than doing it on alcohol. Have
you done shrooms before?
Oh yeah,
okay,
yeah. So, no, it was Aria Uncensored that had the secret segment Packet Sniffer has asked about on DLive, because we didn't even know we were still streaming, right? We just sort of left. I went outside. I was going to leave and go home, got to my car. I was like, no, I can't drive like this.
But you forgot to hit stop the stream in vMix.
Well, I didn't. Ian just chose not to. He just changed it to music or something.
Oh, okay.
And so I went out to my car to have a cigarette. I was like, nope, I can't drive like this. Started messaging people trying to get a ride home. Ended up standing out on the porch, and they were like, hey, well, come back in. We've been having a conversation. So I joined, and bam, I don't know what even to call that. It was an after show for the after show. I have no idea what we discussed, because at that point I was recovering from being a bit too drunk. So we've been talking now about the Robert Mueller report and about how the Republicans are holding it up as more than it really is, while the Democrats are just ignoring it entirely. Neither of these, I think, are good approaches. Ultimately, Greenwald is right in that Democrats did praise Mueller as having lots of integrity and being incorruptible, and he was going to dig down to the truth and all of that, right?
But when he finally did,
they have nothing to say about it. So, moving on, even low-level ancillary, blah, blah, blah. All the way back in March 2017, in reporting that even anti-Trump intelligence officials were warning Democrats there was no solid evidence of a Trump-Russia conspiracy. Shocking. Greenwald predicted that the appointment of a special counsel, which he vehemently favored. How do you vehemently favor something? That's like...
Very passionately, I guess.
That's like oozing beauty or something. I mean, those two words
Some people do that.
Those two words just don't go together, though. Ooze does not sound like a beauty. And vehement, I'm pretty sure vehemently implies negative connotations. I'd have to Google it. But I am not a fan of that word choice. I don't like this guy. He's a terrible writer. But he said that finding evidence of financial impropriety by Paul Manafort, unrelated to the 2016 election, as well as a possible indictment of someone like Carter Page for acting in concert with the Russian government. It's certainly possible to envision an indictment along these lines, but the silver bullet that Democrats have been led to expect will sink Trump appears further away than ever. Well, I mean, yeah, they attempted to pull out every trick in the books. First, he won the election. They were like, oh, it's okay. We can promise to pay the debts of the Electoral College people and get them to actually cast their votes against Trump, even though that's generally not the way it works.
Yep, that didn't work.
But what they were advocating was using money to influence the election directly. It was to have this elite cabal of people, which they don't even support, giving them a lot of money and convincing them to vote the way they wanted them to vote. Meanwhile, the Democrats are the party of, oh, we need to get money out of politics.
Except when it benefits them.
Yeah. And I mean, that's sort of, why doesn't that qualify as election interference when you're organizing an effort to actually influence the election with money? It's just a mess.
Because they did it.
And we're going to get back with more of this discussion about the Mueller report and Democratic insanity, so don't go anywhere. This is The Call to Freedom. Welcome back. This is The Call to Freedom. And if you've ever wanted to have sex with prostitutes and then arrest them, bust people for drugs and then sell the drugs on the side for a nice little bonus, or just enjoy the power rush of being a cop without all the paperwork, then you should try the Thin Blue Line game, which can be found at thinbluelinegame.com. It's the only card game in the world that allows you to shoot someone over a broken taillight and then escape accountability with the magical phrase, I feared for my life. You know, typical cop stuff. Get it now at thinbluelinegame.com. Assault and battery is not included. But for a limited time, you can order your copies and use the coupon code CTF to have all shipping costs waived. So go get it. That's thinbluelinegame.com. And at this point, I'm not sure how limited the amount of time you can use that coupon code is. I need to message them about that. I imagine
Yeah, that's been active for a little while, so limited might stop working anytime now. We don't know.
Yeah, I imagine, though, that it's perpetual and that the reason they're doing it is because they're curious how many of their purchases are actually coming as a result of the sponsorship agreement.
Yeah, that's why they use coupon codes in the first place.
Right. So maybe go buy it. You get a cool little card game, and you can support our show in the process.
Yeah, I haven't actually played the game yet. You have, as I understand it.
I have indeed played it just once. Outside of work with a friend of mine when I got there early one day. It's entertaining. If you don't like cops, you will find it much more entertaining than if you do like cops.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
But if you like cops, you're probably not listening to our show in the first place. So
that's true.
So anyway, this Robert Mueller report is apparently a big goose egg, or it's reporting a big goose egg. The result of it all was that not a single American, whether with the Trump campaign or otherwise, was charged or indicted on the core question of whether there was any conspiracy or coordination with Russia over the election. What about that redheaded Russian chick arrested in Florida? Why doesn't she count?
Yeah, well, she was doing something with the NRA, and she wasn't, as far as I know, she wasn't messing with the election per se.
Well, none of them were. They were attempting to influence it, and I'm sure she did as well, posting on Twitter, hey, you don't need to vote for Hillary. She's a psychotic nutcase who wants to declare war on Russia.
So apparently, if someone who's Russian has an opinion and expresses it on Twitter, that's interference in the election.
It would seem that way. I mean, especially if they're located within Russia. And that's insane. It's absolutely insane. It's not a road we should ever have allowed ourselves to go down. Somebody should have said, oh, I don't like that Twitter and Facebook are being used by Russians to influence American voters. And somebody else should have said, well, then influence them otherwise, you crybaby, and shut up. Because that's the way this should work, right?
Yeah, but the way it actually works is you censor the people who have opinions that you disagree with.
Sadly, you are correct. And that's why we tend to allow people who have opinions that we don't agree with here on the Call to Freedom. Fairly often, in fact. Hasn't happened in about a week. The main caller I'm thinking of is kind of pissed at me.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, well, we didn't take his call. Oh, no.
Well.
We only let him rant for 2 segments one day.
Oh, my. What a...
Yeah. But these facts are fatal to the conspiracy theorists who have drowned U.S. discourse for almost 3 years with a dangerous and distracting fixation on a fictitious espionage thriller involving unhinged claims of sexual and financial blackmail, nefarious infiltration of the U.S. government by familiar foreign villains, and election cheating that empowered an illegitimate president.
Oh, right. That's it. She was supposed to have had sex with somebody. I can't remember who.
Oh, that's right. She was. Yeah, I don't recall now either. But that was it. She was supposed to... We're talking about the redheaded Russian woman in Florida, I think it was, who was ultimately arrested for being a Russian spy because she was a gun activist who I think had sex with somebody at the NRA or something like that. And they're like, we do not approve of you using your vagina. No, you're not allowed to do that. You're from Russia.
Yeah, that's espionage.
So they got the exact prosecutor and investigation that they wanted, and he could not establish that any of this happened. And in many cases, he established that it did not, which alarms me, being a freedom advocate and an advocate of the idea that a person is generally innocent until they're proven guilty. The Mueller report here, the Mueller investigation, seems to have been conducted in an effort to establish Trump's innocence in as much as it was to establish his guilt. From my point of view, it was never about establishing his innocence, right? He was going to be innocent.
No, they wanted him to go as far as he possibly could to find anything they could on Trump or on anybody that worked for Trump.
Right. And that they didn't find that is proof of his innocence, allegedly. And I'm not a fan of that. I think his innocence doesn't need proof. The anticlimactic ending of the Mueller investigation is particularly stunning, given how broad Mueller's investigative scope ended up being, extending far beyond the 2016 election into years' worth of Trump's alleged financial dealings with Russia and obviously Manafort's with Ukraine and Russia. There can simply be no credible claim that Mueller was in any meaningful way impeded by scope, resources, or topic limitation from finding anything for which he searched. Despite efforts today by longtime conspiracy theorists to drastically move goalposts so as to claim vindication, the historical record could not be clearer that Mueller's central mandate was to determine whether crimes were committed by Trump officials in connection with alleged Russian interference over voters. And he keeps saying interference in the election, and that continually bothers me because it's a deceitful euphemism.
No, it's not what happened.
The first paragraph of the New York Times article from May 2017 announcing Mueller's appointment leaves no doubt about that. Coming to us from the New York Times article, the Justice Department appointed Robert S. Mueller III, a former FBI director, as special counsel on Wednesday to oversee the investigation into ties between President Trump's campaign and Russian officials, dramatically raising the legal and political stakes in an affair that has threatened to engulf Trump's 4-month-old presidency. Yeah, because they wouldn't shut up about it.
Right.
As recently as 1 month ago, former CIA director and current NBC News analyst John Brennan was confidently predicting that Mueller could not possibly close his investigation without first indicting a slew of Americans for criminally conspiring with Russia over the election, and specifically predicted that Trump's family members will be included among those charged. And they have a little video here that I'm assuming is network friendly. But since I haven't actually played it, it's not a risk I'm willing to take.
Well,
it did air on MSNBC, but it may also just be super boring. So
probably.
But obviously none of that has happened, nor were any of the original accusations that launched this 3-year-long mania from an accusatory August 2016 online commercial from the Clinton campaign corroborated by the Mueller report. And it looks like here they do have the commercial, and I want to hear that.
Oh, let's take our chances.
We don't know why Trump praises Putin.
Russia. He kills journalists that don't agree with him.
At least he's a leader.
Putin did call me a genius.
He said very nice things about me.
Trump always seems to upend American foreign policy tradition in a way that benefits Vladimir Putin.
The prime objective of the foreign policy of Putin has been to destroy NATO.
NATO is obsolete and it's extremely expensive to the United States.
Manafort has represented the pro-Vladimir Putin prime minister in the Ukraine, Yanukovych.
It looks like here it's just going to fade out to a
there's strong evidence that indicates that it is the work of Russian intelligence.
Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing.
That's perhaps one more reason why we're not seeing his tax returns, because he is deeply involved in dealing with Russian oligarchs.
Is he getting money from Russia? Is his business built on Russian loans?
I mean, that's a common tactic of the media, is to phrase their accusations as questions in order to plant that seed in people's minds. Right.
Then you doubt.
Yeah.
You question.
So, apparently there was nothing to it. Interestingly, on the subject of NATO, and that's something I want us to get into when we get back here in just a moment, because I have been reading the 1980 meeting from the Bilderberg Group that was leaked via
report?
WikiLeaks. Yes.
Okay.
And it outlines pretty clearly the formation of the European Union, and it hits at the same criticisms. I will draw the connection when we get back. I don't have the time to at the moment. But the Bilderberg Group, super fascinating. We're going to get into it. Welcome back. Excuse me. Welcome back. This is The Call to Freedom. I'm your host, as always, Aria, author of Dancing in Hellfire, which you can find on Amazon by searching for it. And I'm joined in the studio today by
Michael Hampton from BitcoinHistory.com.
And as we alluded to before we went out to break, I've been reading a leaked report from the Bilderberg Group. It was the most recent one that I found from 1980. And it's during the height of the Cold War, or just before the end of it. And it's extremely fascinating. What struck me as most interesting about it, though, was how benign these people actually are. They're not conspiring to take over the world. I mean, they're not
evil?
They are conspiring to take over the world. I mean, yeah, they're evil, right? Because
Alex Jones told us they were evil dictators that wanted to rule over us all.
Well, I mean, the reports are available to him as well. And I mean, in a certain sense, that's true, but they're no more evil than any other ruler, right? Effectively, it's not as bad as one would expect, really. And I'm certainly not a fan of these groups of the political and the wealthy elite meeting together behind closed doors to discuss the future of Western society. But that's what they do. And that's what they did even in 1980. One would assume that's what they're still doing today.
They probably are. Like, I hear they meet like every year or so.
They do meet every year, or it may be every 2 years. I'm not 100% sure. But they clearly outlined, and remember this report is from 1980, they clearly outlined the need for the European Union and the creation of it. One of the main sticking points throughout the entire meeting was that Europe needed to both A, fulfill its responsibilities to NATO more so than it was doing, and B, commiserately taking up more responsibility for its own protection. And it was Trump's talk of NATO during that Clinton clip that made me think about that, because the seeds were for that. They were, in fact, outlined in 1980.
Yeah.
So whatever is in the reports from 1990, one would expect to be coming to fruition in the next 4 to 5 years. But clearly outlined within the Bilderberg report from 1980 was the need for the European Union and the ultimate irrelevance of NATO. So Trump seems to be acting upon this 30-year-old, almost 40-year-old agreement that NATO needed to be scaled down and replaced with an equal partnership between Europe and the United States.
Yeah, well, that's been a long-standing complaint for decades now that Europe doesn't do European countries don't do enough in NATO or otherwise to defend themselves.
Right. And that's why the European Union was created, according to the Bilderberg Group, to help them facilitate the sharing of that burden with one another and with the United States. Because it was primarily, especially during 1980, it was evidently the United States responsible for keeping the Western world, quote unquote, safe from communism. Right. And that's how they viewed it. And that's what struck me as most interesting about it, was that it was this coalition of Western influences coming together to sort of plot the direction that Western governments would take. And they seem to be pretty effective of that, because the European Union, sure enough, came to fruition like 15 years later, somewhere in the mid-90s. But the whole thing is really fascinating. You can find it on WikiLeaks. It's the 1980 report. And obviously, a lot of it talks about the Soviet Union and
well, that was a big thing back then.
And the Iranian hostage crisis, which I think ended very shortly after that.
Yeah, that was still going on at the time. That went on for like 3.5 years. It ended in 81.
Yeah. So all interesting stuff. I would highly recommend people read it, especially if they have this perception of the Bilderberg Group, as I more or less did, and that was why I clicked the report, as this group of shadow people plotting to take over the world. Which isn't exactly wrong.
It isn't exactly wrong, but it sounds more like it's a shadowy group of people who are actually ruling the world.
Well, they are, certainly. But they are also benevolent about it. They clearly don't consider us to be sheep, which is the main contention that people have with the Bilderberg Group. It is rulers do to an extent. They consider us to be lesser people. But overwhelmingly within the report, they present themselves as being concerned with our lives, wanting to improve the economy and The euro was actually mentioned as early as 1980 as a need for a separate currency between the United States and the European Union, so that when economic hardship fell upon one of them, it didn't hit the entire Western bloc. So it's really fascinating that this sort of move away from NATO and the emergence of the European Union were alluded to as early as 1980. And I would even go as far as saying they were planned in 1980. And what we see now is the result of that coming to fruition. It's interesting to think of what they may have been discussing in 1990 that we're going to see coming to fruition within the next 5 to 10 years.
Oh, yeah. If you were a member of the Bilderberg Group and you have one of these documents, feel free to send it to WikiLeaks.
Yeah. Do not send it to me directly. Send it to WikiLeaks, and I will get it for them. I have no interest in going to prison for that.
Don't send it to us.
If I'm going to go to prison, it's not going to be for that. Actually, yeah, send it to me. I would like to. I would like to fight that particular battle because it's not technically illegal. It's just something that this private group doesn't want us to have.
Right.
Although this private group certainly has the political clout to have me rated for something entirely unrelated.
If you were a Bilderberg staffer, send us anything you can.
Yeah, absolutely. So many of the reports that we have now come from, pieces of trash that were discarded and things like that, notes taken on. It's amazing how comprehensive the notes are. And, of course, they don't reference individual speakers, right? It's always an American said, an Englishman said, an Italian said, because apparently part of the agreement in regard to the results, in regard to the reports, was that everybody would be anonymous when they spoke. And it references international speakers, an international speaker, which I assume to most likely mean a Russian speaker, somebody who snuck over from the Soviet Union.
Yeah, it could be. I'm not sure.
Because other countries were mentioned, by name, an Italian speaker, an American, and then suddenly an international speaker.
Yeah, could be.
They're trying to hide the origins of that person clearly. Or maybe they just mean international as in not from Europe or the United States. So if you have the time, it's a pretty lengthy report. It's 150 pages because it's so exceedingly thorough in regard to what they discussed. And that makes me think, it was probably transcribed from a recording because I type really quickly, somewhere in the range of about 100 words a minute. And in 1980, certainly with a typewriter, it would not have been possible to keep up with that.
No, you couldn't do that with. Well, 1980, you were just getting to the point where you had electric word processors and things like that.
In 1980?
Yeah. And
I guess technically,
the first personal computers with actual keyboards.
Yeah, like the forerunners to the Commodore 64 and stuff like that. Okay, fair enough. So, I guess it could have been possible. But anybody with the time should go and read that report because it's really fascinating. And it should dispel a lot of the myths about the Bilderberg Group, trying to round us up and put us in FEMA camps and things like that. They seem to not want to do that. They want us to be economically productive, even if it is for their own benefit. I mean, that's capitalism, though. Your economic productivity benefits me, and I'm okay with that. Yeah. You should be okay with that, too, because you're benefited from other people's economic productivity. And sure, maybe the company that owns this operating system is making more money than you or I, but we're all still benefiting. It's sort of like we were discussing the other day about some technological thing that just keeps getting more expensive, even as it should get cheaper, which stands, and I don't remember what it was, but it stands in stark contrast to the television.
Yeah, I'm not, that's not coming to mind.
Remember the big screen televisions, as everybody called them? They took up half a wall and they were $1,700, for a cheap one. And even then, the screen was maybe 36 inches or something like that. Now you can get one of those from Walmart for $100 and it doesn't take up your entire wall.
I know.
Massive improvements and everything getting cheaper. That's the free market. And this is the call to freedom. Welcome back. This is the Call to Freedom. As always, you're invited to give us a call at 603-283-6160. Again, that's 603-283-6160. Or you can use the Discord call-in lines, which you can find at discord.lrn.fm. If you would like to weigh in on the subject or change the subject entirely, really, we're not picky. You can also join in the chat there, which is about a not safe for work topic that I can't comment on at the moment.
You can sure laugh.
Ordinarily, I would comment on it, but I was actually told the other day that much of our conversation is not actually radio-friendly. So,
oops.
Yeah, my bad. So, getting back to the Mueller report, much of the faring even worse is the BuzzFeed bombshell from January, which claimed that President Donald Trump directed his longtime attorney Michael Cohen to lie to Congress about negotiations to build a Trump Tower in Moscow. And this is completely ridiculous. Even if it's true, who freaking cares? I do not see how the timeline of the building of the Trump Tower could in any way suggest a conspiracy between Trump and the Russian government. But that seems to be the allegation.
Yep.
So Cohen also told the special counsel that after the election, the president personally instructed him to lie by claiming that negotiations ended months earlier than they actually did in order to obscure Trump's involvement. That was coming to us from BuzzFeed. Shocking. They're a bit stupid over there.
Yeah.
Mueller himself responded to the story by insisting it was false. And his report directly contradicts it, as it makes clear that Cohen told Mueller the exact opposite.
Oops.
That the president did not direct him to provide false testimony. Cohen also said he did not tell the president about the specifics of his planned testimony. So it's just sort of Democrats' words against Cohen's words. I mean, why would Cohen tell his prosecutor, yeah, Trump told me to lie, and I did? Why would he say that?
He wouldn't. That's not something you would say to the media.
No, well, it's not. It's to Mueller that he would be making that claim. And yeah, that's nonsense. You know, he's not going to indict himself, which is ultimately what that would be. It would be like, yeah, I committed perjury and fraud. Yeah, well, I mean, what's the big deal, Mr. Special Investigator for the FBI? So this whole thing, it's a lot of he said, she said stuff where it really just depends on whose point of view you take. The Republicans are holding up, oh, well, Cohen obviously told the truth to Mueller. He wouldn't dare lie to him. No, they were lying back when they said that they were going to lie about the negotiations. But now he's totally telling the truth. And, of course, Democrats are going to say the same thing, only in reverse. So it's not the definitive denunciation of Trump collusion that Republicans would hope.
It's close enough.
I don't even know if it's close enough. It's just Mueller is saying the same thing that Republicans have been saying. A lot of this bombshell evidence saying that there was no collusion seems to depend entirely upon what people within the Trump campaign said. And that, to me, is kind of silly because they're not going to incriminate themselves. Equally debunked is CNN's major blockbuster by Jim Sciutto, blah, 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 from last July that Michael Cohen, President Donald Trump's former personal attorney, claims that then candidate Trump knew in advance about the June 2016 meeting in Trump Tower. I don't know what you would get there, a person whose name I can't say on the air. The Mueller report says the exact opposite, that Cohen had no knowledge of Trump's advanced knowledge, which I don't feel to be a very definitive statement. Yeah, he didn't know that Trump knew in advance.
It's what do you know and when did you know it?
Yeah.
Again.
And the less said about the Steele dossier, the better. PP tapes, secret meetings in Prague, and indescribably unhinged claims like this one.
From Rachel Maddow, who says Russians may be controlling our government.
Yeah, which, I mean, sure, that's true. So could moon men and lizard people. They could all be controlling our government. Maybe is not really evidence of anything. You can assert anything you want, and she certainly does.
Yeah, it's the aliens.
The best part of the 2016 election was watching her break down live as she realized that Hillary was not going to win. And the Young Turks did it too. If you've never seen it, oh my God, go back and look at Democratic 2016 election coverage just for like the last 2 hours. When they went through the 5 stages of grief. Well, they didn't. They didn't complete the process and move on to acceptance, and they still haven't. They still deny that Trump won the election.
They'll always deny that.
Yeah, even though he quite obviously
did. He didn't get the popular vote.
Oh, God. I'm scared to see what that is.
On D-Live?
On Discord.
Oh, God.
But yeah, so, I mean, you could watch them sort of deny it at first and then come to grips with the reality that Hillary was going to lose, and they become just more and more dejected as the night went on. It's very good stuff. To the extent that I think that big fat buffalo dude at the Young Turks was actually like throwing stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, I
didn't see this.
He was upset. I said I think. I do not remember exactly. It was 3.5 years ago.
It's been a little while.
So, yeah, it has. But why accept a Nazi? Because Trump is not a Nazi. But beyond the gutting of these core conspiracy claims, they haven't been gutted. Again, it's just he said, she said, and whose word you want to believe. And when they're saying...
It was the Democrats that said we should put all our hopes and dreams on the Mueller report.
Yeah, but I did not. I said we should remain skeptical of the claims people make. And when they make claims like, this is definitive proof that there was no collusion whatsoever, I'm going to be as skeptical of that claim as I am when the Democrats say, oh, well, he lied about the Trump Tower negotiations, so clearly he was colluding.
Okay, so colluding, that brings me to a point I wanted to make. If you're out there using that word collusion, you don't know what you're talking about. So I read page 1 of the Mueller report. And like almost the first paragraph, he goes into why the word collusion, it doesn't actually mean anything. And that's not something he can actually look for. All he can do is see whether there was conspiracy or coordination or something that has a legal meaning.
Slideways has asked on D-Live who put the bombs in Tower 7. It's a hard-hitting question. I, too, would like to know the answer to that. I would imagine... And I realize this is not a good thing to say with the amount of time we have left for this particular segment. I imagine it was the CIA who had offices within Building 7, and which, of course, was not hit by a plane, but burned down anyway. In fact, you can actually listen to the owner of the building, I think Silverstein or something like that, I don't remember his name now, actually say, there's been so much loss to life today, I think it would be better to just pull it, referring to demolishing the building. And about 35 minutes later, the building was demolished. So this is the call to freedom. I'm not going to get further into 9/11, though. We're going to get back into the Mueller report because it's the best conspiracy theory. This is the call to freedom. Welcome back. This is the Call to Freedom. You're invited to check us out on social media. You can find us on Facebook by using @CallToFreedom, on Twitter by using @CTF_LRN, and on Mastodon, we're on the Liberdon server. You can find us by using @CallToFreedom there as well. And you're invited to check us out on Discord, which you can find at discord.lrn.fm, where most of the many of the show hosts here on the Liberty Radio Network are members and regularly chat with people. There's a particularly amusing clip from the most recent episode of Aria Uncensored being posted and discussed right now.
Yeah, we did look at that over the break, but the audio didn't come to my headset, so I don't know what it was.
I don't think you had your headset on. It came to mine.
I put it on, but I was hearing nothing.
Oh, weird. That's very weird. Anyway, so that was a thing that's been going on. Somebody's pointed out on Twitch, Crimson has pointed out that Mueller did not have the authority to prosecute Trump in the first place. This is true. His job was not to prosecute Trump.
His job was to find the evidence.
His job was to investigate, and he did have the authority to investigate Trump. It is Congress, and Congress alone, that has the authority to indict and prosecute a president. It's called impeachment.
Yep.
And they may find him not guilty, as they did with Bill Clinton, or they may find him guilty, as, presumably they want to do with Trump. But speaking of impeachment, lunatic Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says it's time to investigate Trump for impeachment. Wait a minute.
Wait, what was going on the last 2.5 years?
I need to know who is confused about how this whole thing works. You can't investigate Trump for impeachment because he's never impeached anybody. And we kind of know that to be true. So she's signing up to impeach President Trump in the wake of Special Counsel Robert Mueller's report, which is kind of the entire point that I've been trying to make, is that what this report actually says depends on your political perspective. Crimson is making the allegation, of course, that it was always doomed to failure because he was too limited in scope, basically, which is not anything that was said prior to today. It was always said that he had enough authority, he had enough scope, he had the mission, he had all of it, he had everything it needed to do the investigation. What it seems to have turned out is that there was no evidence there. But now they want to impeach him, and I'm being told that Elizabeth Warren just called to start the impeachment process 10 minutes ago. So this burning dumpster fire is not over yet, and I'm going to enjoy the spectacle, and I might even make marshmallows over the fire. It's a dumpster fire. I don't want to make marshmallows on it. I guess technically that's what we're doing here, is making marshmallows over the dumpster fire. In a series of tweets on Thursday after the report was released, the first-term Democrat said she would sign on to an impeachment resolution introduced by Rashida Tlaib of Michigan and called on Congress to investigate potential obstruction of justice by the president.
We all know where that's going to go.
Yeah, nowhere. Well, I don't know. They may have the votes to do it.
Oh, I'm sure they have the votes to impeach. I see no reason why they wouldn't.
Cortez said that while she understands the political reality of the Senate and election considerations, that she cannot see a reason for us to abdicate from our constitutionally mandated responsibility to investigate.
Okay, fine. Hold some hearings.
A task which they had just delegated to Robert Mueller. I don't know who she expects to do this investigation. I don't think she's going to be out there with a magnifying glass digging over fingerprints and audio tapes and things like that. I don't think anyone in Congress or the House, well, in the House or in the Senate, is going to be doing that. No, because what they do is they have these other governmental organizations like the FBI and special prosecutors like Mueller do the investigations, the result of which we literally just got. So you have your evidence there. You have your investigation, and you have the evidence that investigation led to. There's no reason whatsoever to do another. Many know I take no pleasure in discussions of impeachment. No, just things that she thinks are politically expedient, like abolish ICE.
Right.
Which she immediately backpedaled on.
Yeah. What was it? She wanted to just change their name?
Well, she wants to rebrand them. Yeah. I didn't campaign on it, and I rarely discuss it unprompted, Ocasio-Cortez continued. We all prefer working on our priorities, pushing Medicare for all, tackling students' loans, and a Green New Deal. Yeah, we talked about that with Ronald Reagan on a Tyrannosaurus Rex here on the Call to Freedom. But the report squarely puts this on our doorstep because Democrats are reading what they want to read from the report just as Republicans are reading what they want to read.
That's how it works.
Mueller's report is clear in pointing to Congress' responsibility in investigating obstruction of justice by the president. So as such, I'll be signing onto the impeachment resolution. Apparently, Mueller's team could not rule out that Trump criminally obstructed justice, according to this excerpt here, which I'm trying to pull up. It's so tiny. At the same time, if we had confidence, after a thorough investigation of the facts, that the president clearly did not commit obstruction of justice, we would so state. Based on the facts and the applicable legal standards, we are unable to reach that judgment. Well, yes, and again, that's because you can't just assume that he committed obstruction of justice and assume that he's guilty unless you can prove that he's innocent. What they're saying here is we can't prove that he's innocent. Okay, I don't see why that's a problem. It's not your job to prove people innocent.
Right.
It's the job of the state to prove that people are guilty. And he wasn't able to do that either. So the default assumption in this case should be that he is innocent until proven guilty. But they've been talking about impeachment since January, at least, when the Muslim woman received considerable criticism from Muslims we know for dropping F-bombs regarding impeachment at a celebration after being sworn into Congress. So in March, she put forth a resolution calling on the House Judiciary Committee to probe whether Trump committed impeachable offenses. So they don't even know whether or not he actually did anything that qualifies him to be impeached. What their issue is that they want to look into him. They want to investigate him just in case they can find something worth impeaching him over. This is entirely politically motivated.
Oh, yeah, it's all political.
And I don't care if they come back and impeach him and remove him from office, or if they come back and say they didn't find anything. To me, they no longer have any credibility whatsoever.
No, when they come back in a year or two and they can't find anything worth impeaching him on, they will not make a big announcement over it. It will not be a major news story. It'll be hidden in the back pages.
They will intentionally do it not that quickly. They want to do this at a time to ruin Trump's election chances in 2020.
Yeah, it'll come out next fall.
Well, no, the report won't. They won't finish it. They will leave it open for as long as possible until after the election so that they can claim to their supporters, look, we're actively impeaching Trump. We're trying to remove him from office. That's what it's all going to be about. The timing isn't coincidence. So they think they have an obligation to investigate whether the president committed impeachable offenses. That's disgusting.
Good luck.
Did they have that same responsibility when Barack Obama was in office or when George W. Bush was in office?
No, yes, they did, but they didn't do anything.
They don't have the responsibility to investigate whether a president has committed an impeachable offense. They have the authority to investigate whether an offense is impeachable, but they're not doing that. They're looking for something to impeach him over. They're not looking for something he's done and hoping that it's, well, they kind of are. This is a Call to Freedom. I'm going to flesh out my thoughts during the break and get more into it when we get back, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back. This is the Call to Freedom. And as always, I'm going to remind you that our podcasts have moved. They are officially, completely on Podbean now. You can find them at calltofreedomlive.podbean.com. And they're now located as well on Spotify, Google Play Music, and iTunes. So
finally,
any of those platforms where you can search for Call to Freedom, you can do so, and you can find our show and listen to it directly. Mortified Penguin accuses me of defending Trump. I am not defending Trump. I don't think anything I've said at any point in this could qualify as defending Trump. I am skeptical of claims that one side makes about the other. And I think that skepticism in that regard is both healthy and the best approach to this sort of situation. No, I don't believe Democrats when they say that Trump conspired with Russia, however we wish to phrase it. I don't believe them. My default position is say, okay, convince me that you're not full of crap.
Yeah, let's have some evidence here.
And when Robert Mueller comes forward and says, well, I can't prove that Trump is innocent, but I also can't prove he's guilty, that's more the position I take about it, except I'm going to extend to Trump the same courtesy that I believe should be extended to every single individual, which is that they are innocent until proven guilty. Not that their innocence has to be proven. Their guilt has to be proven. I will give Trump that same courtesy. And if you think this qualifies as defending him, then I would suggest to you that partisanism is blinding you. So anyway, back to Alexandria Ocasio, whatever her name is, that crazy chick from New York who went from waitress to politician, and good on her for that. But she has no idea what she's talking about. She did in economics, though, I hear.
How'd that happen?
I don't know. I don't know how you do in economics. But the Mueller report outlined 10 potential instances of obstruction of justice, apparently, by President Trump, including his decision to fire FBI Director James Comey and his attempts to oust the special counsel. But Mueller declined to come down on whether the president committed criminal obstruction of justice and instead left the decision in Congress's hands.
Okay.
So, sorry, we're being derailed. Yeah, a lot of people like to call me crazy. I don't know why. They assume, that I say that I'm female. In fact, I've never said that, not at any point in my life. I was asked earlier whether I'm a trap. I responded, I'm trans. Yeah, I'm very upfront about being trans. That other people assume that this means I'm going around going, I'm a woman, is BS. I have never done that. So I am fully aware of what I am. And if having a preference of makeup and bodily choices and clothing makes me crazy, then again, I would suggest to you that your attachment to arbitrary definitions is a problem. Yeah, don't get me started on the DSM-5. I have to. I have to address that when it gets brought up. Because the label of crazy, right?
Is that an actual psychiatric diagnosis?
What?
Crazy?
Well, no. But if you are in the DSM-5, if you qualify for one of the conditions in the DSM-5, you have a mental illness, right?
Oh, right.
So the reason that gender identity disorder or gender dysphoria is included within the DSM-5 has been stated by the people who made the DSM-5 to ensure that estrogen, spironolactone, and testosterone and other hormonal therapies are available and covered by insurance for trans people. That's why it's still there, even though it would be more politically expedient to remove that ammunition from the gun that a lot of people like to point at me and say, no, you're clearly crazy because the DSM-5 says so. And even though it says that there's a difference between gender and sex and all of these other things that we don't want to recognize as being valid, this one thing right here, it's totally valid. The rest of it, no, not so much. But this part here that reinforces the insult that we want to throw at you, totally valid. But the reason they did that, the reason they kept it in there, and again, the people who actually produced the DSM have stated this, was so that hormonal therapies are available to trans people and covered by people's insurance, not considered optional. So, I guess good on them for that, right?
Right.
And there was another point related to that I was actually going to get into, but I don't remember exactly what it was. But it was related to that. Yes, the DSM tool is absolutely a political tool. It is not a medical guide. It's politicized from beginning to end. And it always has been. Homosexuality, I think the DSM didn't exist then, but the same
Oh, it was in there.
The same was it
in a previous version?
Certainly, I wouldn't expect it to still be there in 2019 or anything like that. But once upon a time, whether the DSM existed or not, homosexuality was considered indicative of mental illness, extreme mental illness. In fact, you were a pedophile if you were gay, and all of these other things that have just totally untrue, totally fabricated stereotypes about people because they didn't want to acknowledge the validity of their life choices. Yeah, until the 70s. That's what I would have expected. So, I mean, all kinds of things like that you're going to find in there. There's probably polyamory listed within there. Oh, if you don't want to engage in monogamous relationships, you're insane. So, I mean, yeah, it's a political tool. It always has been, because in the end, what you have is just a bunch of people sitting down to write what society standards should be. And that's what the DSM is. They try to reflect changes in social standards. They're not always successful, but that's all they do. It's a political tool from beginning to end. So anyway, apparently there are 10 potential instances of obstruction of justice, according to Democrats, which I find to be just extremely fascinating, because we're now looking at Vox, because we're fair and balanced here on Call to Freedom. Yeah. As long as you're I guess it's fair to call us fair and balanced. We hate both Republicans and Democrats equally. So Republicans are saying, voila, it's proven. There was no collusion. You can shut up now. And Democrats are going, no, we found 10 potential instances of obstruction of justice in the same report that other people are reading, and saying, no, this completely vindicates Trump. Like we were talking about earlier, it really just depends on which side of the political aisle you fall on.
Yeah, and which words you skip over when you read it.
With respect to whether the president can be found to have obstructed justice by exercising his powers under Article 2 of the Constitution, we conclude that Congress has authority to prohibit a president's corrupt use of his authority in order to protect the integrity of the administration of justice. The report reads, That's an interesting idea. If he has the power to do it, I mean, that's the issue here. You know, he shouldn't have the power to do it, but he does.
So if he has the power under Article 2 of the Constitution to do something, then they're saying that only Congress has the authority to say, no, you can't do that, and because it's corrupt.
Yeah, and that's not true at all. Congress has no authority whatsoever to tell the president that he can't exercise his constitutional powers that he should not have, and that indeed no one should have, because the Constitution shouldn't exist, and neither should the government.
Well, there's that, yeah.
Yeah. There is no strict agreement among Democrats on what to do following the Mueller report, including when it comes to impeachment. House Majority Leader Hoyer said in an interview with CNN on Thursday that impeachment is not worthwhile at this time. Very frankly, there is an election in 18 months, and the American people will make a judgment.
Yeah, I'm going to predict this one. I'm going to say Trump gets reelected.
Yeah. I mean, that's generally the idea here. Put this information to the American people. Let the American people decide whether or not he should be impeached. And if they so decide that he should be impeached, then they won't vote for him. But it's also possible, I think they're going to run this throughout the election as oh, look, we're taking on Trump. We're impeaching him. But it's equally possible that they're going to withhold it until he wins re-election in 2020, which, although I don't like Trump, I'm pretty confident he's going to win. Because they're going to run Bernie Sanders against him, thinking, oh, well, America's just totally ready for this insane brand of socialism that isn't socialism, even according to real socialists, and that is just basically a new layer of the fascism that we've always had. And America's going to go, no, this guy identifies openly as a socialist, and we don't want anything to do with that. And this is the Call to Freedom. We'll be back with more of this discussion, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back. This is the Call to Freedom. I'm your host, as always, Aria of Aria Uncensored, which you can watch live on DLive and Twitch and YouTube. Airs every Tuesday night at 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I do the show topless and usually some sort of inebriated. The past 2 episodes I've been drunk. On the next one, I'm going to be on shrooms.
That will be a trip.
Literally. And I'm joined in the studio today by
Michael Hampton from BitcoinHistory.com.
And we've been talking about the Mueller report and the fallout from it and the tendency among Republicans. Yes, we are increasingly polarized, and I think that's demonstrated clearly by the perspectives people are presenting in regard to the Mueller report. People on the progressive left want to impeach Trump. People on the right are holding it up as some sort of vindication of Trump.
It's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. There is no strict agreement among Democrats on what to do. I said that. Okay. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi in March essentially ruled out impeaching Trump, saying, I don't think we should go down that path because it divides the country, and he's just not worth it.
Divides the country? Has she been out of her office in the last 4 years?
It would seem not, because we are pretty divided as a country goes. The right hates the left hates the right, and they respond to one another by becoming more radical, louder, and more obnoxious, more hateful, more unwilling to listen to what the other side has to say, which of course makes them feel ignored and discarded, which causes them to become more hateful and more bigoted to the extent where, yeah, it's just too complete. It's a tale of two countries is what it's becoming.
Yeah, that's about where it's going.
And it's not divided among wealth lines as it was in A Tale of Two Cities. It's divided rather clearly among political lines. I'm actually sort of writing a book about A Tale of Two Countries. That's the working title. That won't be what it's called in the end. But it's about two trans people, one of whom lives in California and one of who lives in rural Arkansas, something I've got a fair bit of experience with.
Yeah, because you lived actually fairly close to rural Arkansas.
Well, through part of my life, I lived in rural Arkansas. So
it was just across the river, right?
Yeah. The perspective difference between these two people is something I really like exploring. And sure, they're both straw people. The trans person from Arkansas certainly doesn't represent me. But I think it's going to be an interesting story when I actually get around to finishing it, which is not being done at the moment because I'm instead writing Beyond Words and Labels, which is actually in the final stages of the editing process, and I expect to be published in July. So stay tuned for that, and then it will be no longer author of Dancing in Hellfire. It will be author of Beyond Words and Labels. So Pelosi sent a letter to House Democrats to set up a meeting on Monday. Good God, their writing is just as bad.
At least their editing is.
No, I don't think they are. Pelosi sent a letter to House Democrats to set up a meeting a Monday.
A Monday, yeah, instead of on Monday.
Yeah.
A Monday. Yeah.
To discuss the grave matter of the Mueller report. Congress will not be silent, she wrote. House Judiciary Committee Chair Jerry Nadler on Friday issued a subpoena demanding an unredacted version of the Mueller report and the underlying materials by May the 1st.
Oh, well, you know, the thing about the redactions is that a lot of that stuff has to do with Julian Assange.
A lot of the stuff in the Mueller report?
That's what I suspect. There's going to be Julian Assange stuff in there.
Yeah, but I don't think that's going to be represent a book of it. I just don't think Assange had a lot to do with the 2016 Trump collusion thing. Well, I guess, from their point of view, he did. There's going to be a big
section of it because supposedly all those DNC emails went through him.
Right. But as Fox's Ella Nielsen noted, Nadler said on Thursday that it was too early to talk impeachment, but he didn't rule it out either. That's one possibility. There are others, he said. It's too early to reach those conclusions. It's one reason we wanted the Mueller report, and we'll want other evidence, too.
Other evidence, okay.
Democrats have also called on Mueller to testify on Capitol Hill by May the 23rd. Democrats have ramped up their investigations into Trump in recent weeks on a wide range of fronts, including his tax returns, his business ties, and his inaugural committee's fundraising. Why don't you just campaign against the dude?
Yeah. Well, They're trying to take him down any way they possibly can.
There's an election.
Point out all the stops.
There's an election in 18 months. His presidency is more than halfway over. He's already started campaigning. Bill Weld has already started campaigning against him. You got a field of like almost 20 Democrats working to run against him. Put your power, put your money behind one of those and just campaign against the guy. Beat him fair and square in the electoral game.
This is politics. There's no such thing as fair and square. If they can cheat their way to a victory, they will.
But they wouldn't even cheat their way to a victory. Pence would just take over as president. And however, my argument has always been that Mike Pence is impeachment protection. Do you really want the United States government in the hands of a fundamentalist Christian, the guy who was responsible for conversion therapy being added to the GOP platform in 2016? When you impeach Trump, you're making that guy president.
Yeah.
You don't suddenly get to go, okay, well, we removed the Republican. Now we can put Barack Obama or Elizabeth Warren in the seat. That's not the way it works. You're just going to make Mike Pence president.
Yeah, I think what they're thinking is that they know what Mike Pence is going to do. They know he's like a conservative, evangelical, whatchamacallit, that they know how to work with that type of person. Trump just drives them nuts. They don't know how to deal with him.
Well, they don't need to deal with him. All they need to do is not pass laws and not let him veto them. I mean, that's the way to really go about doing this. But Democrats have ramped up their investigation. I don't know why they care so much. I mean, all of this is them using their political power as an attempt to unseat President Trump.
That's what they're after.
And they're not going to be successful. But even if they are, even if he is impeached and removed from office, would that prevent him from running again in 2020 and winning again?
I don't think it might.
You certainly can't.
I'm not sure. That's a constitutional question that I don't think anyone's ever thought of.
You can't try a person twice for the same crime, so they wouldn't be able to impeach him again by saying, "Oh, well, you colluded with Russia in 2016's campaign, so we're going to impeach you again for that." So they wouldn't be able to do that, even if he was able to run again. But I don't know whether or not he would be able to run again. Presumably, no, convicted felons can run for office. And I think this would make him a convicted felon. It would be interesting. I would like to see it just for curiosity's sake, or just ask a constitutional attorney.
Well, like we said before, it's going to be fun to watch.
It is going to be fun to watch. I'm going to be happy to see it. They're talking about identity politics over there on D-Live. I'm not a fan of identity politics. That's why I don't have anything to do with, what's the name of them? The name of the LGBT libertarian group. Outright Libertarians. Yeah.
Right.
It's why I don't have anything to do with them and why they don't have anything to do with me. I don't think that embracing one's identity is going to be let me
your
put that another way.
Identity is one thing, but letting your identity dictate your political beliefs is ridiculous.
Yeah, well, and to be fair, the outright libertarians technically aren't doing that, except that they don't welcome me, and it's because I'm not an identitarian in the way that they are. But so anyway, Democrats are trying to pull off a delicate balancing act, investigating Trump while focusing on policy issues that won them the House in 2018, including cheaper health care and coming up with a plan to repair the nation's infrastructure, none of which are responsibilities that should be in the hands of government because government can't do anything right. And I have only to point to the VA, the Veterans Administration, as unequivocal proof that government cannot do health care at all.
That's how universal health care is going to look for everyone.
Yes, I cannot imagine why anyone would want that. This is the Call to Freedom. Welcome back. This is the Call to Freedom. You're invited to give us a call at 603-283-6160. Again, that's 603-283-6160. Or you can join the Discord call-in lines, which you can find at discord.lrn.fm, and join in on the conversation there. So we've been talking about the Mueller report and the Democrats' response to it. Evidently, Elizabeth Warren is also joining the call for impeachment alongside Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Whatever her name is.
Yeah, AOC. I get why people call her AOC now. So I don't think much of anything is going to happen with this. I think the whole thing is just a political circus, and it's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, well, it's entertaining.
So getting back to The Intercept here, because that was pretty much the end of the Democrats' perspective on it. They're finding within it evidence that it's time to impeach Trump, evidently, while Republicans are finding in it that, Trump is totally innocent of all charges and that the collusion conspiracy theory has just been demolished. So according to them, because Trump's status as a public figure at the time was attributable in large part to his prior business and entertainment dealings, Robert Mueller's office investigated whether a business contact with Russia-linked individuals and entities during the campaign period, like in the Trump Tower Moscow project, led or involved coordination. Indeed, Mueller's examination of Trump's financial dealings with Russia long predates the start of the Trump campaign, going back several years before the election. Between at least 2013 and 2016, the Trump Organization explored a similar licensing deal in Russia involving the construction of a Trump-branded property in Moscow. Is he getting at a point? He doesn't seem to be getting at a point.
Well, this is background, because a lot of people don't know that any of this ever happened.
They don't. Mueller additionally made clear that he received authorization to investigate numerous Americans for ties to Russia, despite their not being formally associated with the Trump campaign, including Michael Cohen and Roger Stone. And regarding Cohen, Mueller specifically was authorized to investigate any attempts by Cohen to receive funds from Russia-backed entities. But none of this deep diving to other individuals or years of alleged financial dealings with Russia resulted in finding that Trump or any of his associates were controlled by or corruptly involved with the Russian government.
Nothing there, then.
Oh, of course not. Then there is the issue of Manafort's relationship with the Ukrainians, and specifically his providing of polling data to Konstantin Kilimnik, an episode which Trump-Putin conspiracist Marcy Wheeler, along with many others, particularly hyped over and over. So because he gave them polling data that presumably was widely available? That's bizarre. To begin with, Mueller said his office did not identify evidence of a connection between that act and Russian interference in the election, nor did he establish that Manafort otherwise coordinated with the Russian government on its election interference efforts. Because of questions about Manafort's credibility and our limited ability to gather evidence on what happened to the polling data after it was sent to Kilimnik, the office could not assess what Kilimnik did with it. The office did not identify evidence of a connection between Manafort's sharing polling data and Russia's interference in the election, which has already been reported by U.S. media outlets at the time of the August 2nd meeting. The investigation did not establish that Manafort otherwise coordinated with the Russian government on its election interference efforts. And again, even Mueller is characterizing it as election interference, which is deceitful and a euphemism for saying that that they influenced American voters. I would much rather see the word election stricken from every single one of these usages and replaced with voter. These voter influence efforts.
That would be more accurate.
Also endlessly hyped by Wheeler and other conspiracists were the post-election contacts between Trump and Russia, as though it's unusual that a major power would seek to build new constructive relationships with a newly elected administration. Indeed, Wheeler went so far as to cite these post-election contacts to turn her own source into the FBI on the ground that it constituted smoking gun evidence, an act for which she was praised by the Washington Post. But nothing that Mueller claimed about the evidence related to Mueller investigation that she claimed to possess appears to be in the Mueller report. Here again, the Mueller report could not substantiate any of these claims. So it's not surprising that, it's always been smoke and mirrors that the Democrats have been pointing at. It very much reminds me of Glenn Beck, and I think it was Michelle Bachmann, who created this entire web of crap about how Barack Obama was totally funded by, it wasn't ISIS, it was someone else at that time. And they were just totally upset about it. So they did one of those crazy things where they just had this backboard filled with thumbtacks and strings connecting them and things like that. And they went, therefore, Obama is a Muslim. And it was just as insane as when the Democrats are doing it now and going, therefore, Trump is conspiring with Russia.
Yeah, must be, because I've seen that meme too.
Apparently, the entire centerpiece of the Trump-Russia conspiracy was the Trump Tower meeting. And it was such a dud that Jared Kushner, halfway through the meeting, texted Manafort to declare the meeting to be a waste of time, and then instructed his assistant to call him so that he could concoct a reason to leave. Probably didn't do him any favors with the special prosecutor. But not only could Mueller not find any criminality in this meeting relating to election conspiring, but he could not even use election law to claim it was an illegal gift of something of value from a foreigner because, among other things, the information offered was of so little value that it could not even pass the $2,000 threshold required to charge someone for a misdemeanor, let alone the $25,000 required to make it a felony. So neither the Trump Tower meeting itself nor its participants, for so long held up as proof of the Trump-Russia conspiracy, could serve as the basis for any finding of criminality. Indeed, the key Trump world participants who testified about what happened at that meeting were not even accused by Mueller of lying about any of it. But again, that would depend on, their conflicting statements with each other and him being able to say, ha, I caught you in a lie. If they have already agreed on their stories and the details in advance, that isn't likely to happen.
Yeah, true.
That's one of the reasons that Bush and Cheney refused to appear separately before the September 11th Commission, who compiled a report that was absolute BS and didn't even mention Building 7 that we talked about earlier. Not even mentioned at all within the 9/11 Commission report. And I think not even mentioned within the FEMA report of the same event. This is the Call to Freedom. We're going to go a little bit deeper into the Mueller report, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back. This is the Call to Freedom. As always, you're invited to give us a call at 603-283-6160. Again, that's 603-283-6160. Or you can use the Discord call-in lines, which you can find at discord.lrn.fm. And the D-Live chat is now distracting me because they are talking about the subject of groups, which, of course, don't exist.
Right.
And I've actually talked extensively about this. I'm not going to get further into it. I am making a video on this exact subject following criticism I've received from Shemale versus Nazi, which is when I sat down with Christopher Cantwell, and you can find it on my YouTube channel. Just search for Aria DeMezzo, or probably Shemale versus Nazi will take you right to it. I pointed out then, just as I did when I was on his show back in October, that groups don't exist. And during the course of this, I used the most obvious example I could think of, which was a carton of eggs, that a carton of eggs isn't a real thing. And that when you buy a carton of eggs, you're not buying a single thing. You're buying a styrofoam container. You're buying 12 eggs, and so on, right? We may call it a carton of eggs for simplicity's sake. Nobody says to their husband or their wife, hey, I'm going to the store to buy a styrofoam container that happens to have 12 eggs in it. No one says that, right?
Right.
But it's just a linguistic thing, because at the end of the day, what you are buying is 12 eggs.
And that container, which you're going to throw out.
Yeah. And somehow, because deconstructionism, this became about the eggs themselves. And I found myself saying that eggs don't exist. And I knew when I said it that it was not going to be well received. Nope. And it was not. And so that's what my next video is about. And, you know, these groups, they exist in the same limited sort of way. They are artificial human constructs that we use for categorization purposes. So now we're being asked, is your family a group? No, I mean, they're a group, yeah, but a family doesn't exist. You have people who are tied together by various degrees of relations, but at what point do you cut off the relationship? Because technically we're all related, right?
And we're all human.
Yeah, so why stop at this level of genetic similarity, and why not go a little bit further? Why not go all the way to race? And why stop at race? Why not go all the way further to the species? And if you're going to do that, why stop there? Why not go all the way to just being an organism here on Earth, being an earthling?
Right.
Technically, we're all one big family, sure, but families don't exist.
Where do you draw the line?
Yeah. Where people choose to draw the line is completely arbitrary. And again, you won't find a school of fish. You won't find a flock of birds. These are just categorical human constructs that we use to more conveniently communicate what we're experiencing. You're seeing individual birds flying together. You're seeing 50 birds that are flying. You're not seeing a single flock. And if you think you are, I would ask you to have your eyes checked. Because if you zoom in a little bit or get some binoculars, you will see that mass of things is actually 50 individual birds. The birds are real. The birds exist. The individual is real for reasons I'm getting into in the video. But you shouldn't operate under the assumption, and even if you want to call it a flock of birds and operate under the assumption that a flock is a real thing, I'm totally fine with that. And in the case of eggs and flocks of birds, it really doesn't matter whether you recognize that it's an artificial human construct, a spook, as Stirner would call it. It doesn't matter. But when we start talking about groups of people, with one person saying that, you know, your country goes downhill as you get more black people, or something just horrible like that, then it becomes a problem, because then you're not just acting like these groups are real. You're creating real consequences in the real world for real individuals based on that errant belief. And I don't really care how many eggs you smash in your quest to determine whether or not eggs exist, but I do care how many people you smash in your quest to determine how to best improve your vision of society, which also isn't a real thing. A stamp collection isn't a real thing, and you can't burn a few stamps to make the stamp collection better. All you can really do is, you know, burn a few stamps. And that doesn't really help.
How did we get onto this?
The D-Live chat is all about it.
Oh.
So back to the Mueller report. And I mean, the subject is one I'm intensely fascinated by because I'm an individualist. So the entire idea of groups is repugnant to me. They made the allegation that it's better to you're stronger in a pack than you are as an individual. And there is some truth to that. But you're stronger as an individual, I would say, in the end. And again, Nietzsche would agree, arguing that there is nothing that takes more strength than to be an individual, especially in an increasingly collectivized society, where your allegiance to one group or another depends entirely, or your membership in one group or another, based on characteristics that you would expect to be independent of this, depend entirely upon your political allegiance. It's the reason the LGBT communities generally aren't accepting of me, because I'm not a Democrat. And it doesn't matter that I'm an individualist and things like that, although it kind of does, because that means I don't want to take part in their little participation trophies for having various characteristics.
Okay, so then why don't the outright libertarians accept you?
Because I say bad things about them.
Yeah, that would do it.
Look, they ran this article from this trans chick in Oklahoma about how awful it was that she was denied the ability to use the women's room at a mall, and she had to go out to her car and pee into a bottle. And this was for Trans Awareness Day or some kind of crap like that. And I was like, hey, I've got this article here. It's already written, already been professionally edited about how trans people in prison are being made to suffer because the state is looking at, its own documentation rather than these people's individuals and personalities. And they go, no, we're going to run this article about peeing in a bottle. But wait a minute, because these people are being raped thousands of times during their incarceration. I think this is, on your scale of priorities, this should rank higher than peeing in a bottle.
They didn't agree.
They didn't agree because not everyone can claim to be a victim of sexual assault in prison. But every trans person can say at one point or another they were denied access to one particular bathroom. And even if they haven't, they can still make the claim because who's going to know the difference? Who would know the difference if I say, oh, I stopped by this gas station at Tennessee and they wouldn't let me use the women's room? I'm therefore a victim. It's BS, Yeah. And that's the kind of thing they do. They want to wear that victim badge, their little paper safety clip or whatever it is now, because they want to play into that whole nihilism of the left. And it is nihilism. It's absolutely nihilism. It's an inversion of virtue, and I may rename Beyond Words and Labels to that because of that. But what they've done is they've taken strength and they've turned it into an evil, bad, negative thing. And they've taken weakness and they turned it into a positive thing. This is why they love the victim so much, because a victim is by definition a weak person who has been abused by a strong person. So to them, the victim is the Übermensch. The victim is the super person. And even though, and what's bizarre about it, and it creates this weird sort of logic that's really hard to define and pin down, is that they attempt to use weakness and victimhood, which again is a weak person abused by a strong person, as a way of gaining strength over others. It's rather than using physical strength or, just cultural strength or whatever, they choose instead to use emotional strength or emotional blackmail, rather, to make people subservient to them and the victimhood culture. And this is the Call to Freedom. We're going to dig a little bit deeper into the Mueller report rather than individualism, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the Call to Freedom, and maybe you really listen to the show regularly and have been wondering how you can help and show your support. Social media shares go a long way, but so does cash, and you can do so on Patreon by using at patreon.com/call-to-freedom. Our wonderful patrons there are currently helping to keep the show up and running, including the podcast at calltofreedomlive.podbean.com, which for the people new on DLive, is a way for you to listen to our show without any of the commercials. Again, that's calltofreedomlive.podbean.com. And we can't thank our supporters enough for showing their support. Once more, that's patreon.com/call-to-freedom if you would like to check it out. They also get updates first about show-related things and all of that good stuff. They were the first to know that we are now on iTunes, finally. So all good things. They also sponsor the Libertarian Drama of the Week when there is Libertarian drama. So,
sometimes there is.
Yeah, sometimes there is.
This week, not so much.
So I wanted to talk a bit more about the subject of individualism and collectivism because we've seen it here in this Twitch chat, in this DLive chat. Well, hold on. The spook thing is not a meme per se. It's what Max Stirner used to characterize non-existent, fictitious human constructs that we tend to treat as real, products of the ego, of human ego, so to speak. And the belief in these things as real make them spooks. So I'm an individualist, right? And I'm pretty sure Michael is as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't discussed it extensively, but it's usually a safe assumption when you're dealing with people willing to go onto a talk show with a tranny that they're an individualist.
Not always, but we've met we've seen some trans people who that might not apply to.
That you wouldn't be willing to go onto the show with them?
That might not be individualist.
Well, I'm certainly not saying that all trans people are individualists or something like that. I'm saying that somebody willing to go onto a show with a trans person is more often than not going to be an individualist.
I don't know.
Because most people are going to go, I'm not doing a show with a tranny. So, speaking of collectivism, right? I'm not a fan of it, and I've been collectivized in this exact DLive chat. You can scroll up and see it if your cache is large enough or whatever. I'm not sure how DLive does it. It seems that older chats do disappear in time. I'm not sure what the time frame is on that, but like early on in the show, and it's not just here on DLive, it happens quite regularly, where you end up with these people who just assume that I'm going to be a leftist SJW because I'm trans, right?
Yeah, that's what we saw at the what was it the other day?
The ACLU event?
Right.
Yeah, every single one of them would have been diehard anti-Trump. They were all in support of the anti-discrimination bill that was passed. I'm adamantly against that bill. And amusingly, my opponent in the race for sheriff last year made it a point to inform Ian Freeman of Free Talk Live, the show that comes on next, that that he supported the anti-discrimination bill. And I was just like, well, that's nice. I don't.
Okay.
I think that a person should be able to discriminate on whatever grounds they want. Even though that involves collectivizing people, I will recognize their right to do it. I would much rather appeal to them and be like, look, you should treat people as individuals. But one thing I hear quite a lot is, you're one of the few trans people I don't hate. You're one of the few trans people that I don't think should be shot and killed. Chris Cantwell told me this on his show, which I don't think is even a thing anymore.
Yeah, I think he's done.
Yeah. He was like, well, I will admit that you're one of the few trans people who I don't think is fit for the ovens or whatever. I don't remember exactly how he phrased it. Yeah. Like, whew, boy, I was worried about you there for a second.
Yeah, that's a sigh of relief.
Right. So individualism is important, and I think we all have the capacity to recognize, however discriminatory we are, and however we wish to categorize people based on arbitrary characteristics like skin color, sexual orientation, gender identity, or whatever, we all have the capacity to recognize that there are people who break out of our stereotypical view. There are trans people who are not diehard leftists. There are black people who are Republicans.
Yep.
There are white people who are, I don't know. I can't think of really any.
Not racist?
Yeah. Thank you. God, that's so sad, but you are accurate. I have been called the Uncle Tom of trans people. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I don't think those people have ever read Uncle Tom's Cabin.
No, certainly not. But I've also seen I've seen white people stand there with a straight face and call black people race traitors for voting Republican.
What?
I have not seen this in person, but I have seen video of it, and it is a thing that happens. Evidently, because that's how they view it. It's not about skin color. It's not about gender identity. It's not about being LGBTQ. It's about allegiance to the Democratic Party. And if you don't have that, then they will gladly turn and hang you with the same rope they're going to use to hang Trump.
And anyone else they don't like.
To them, there is no difference. And it's not at all. They pretend like it's about caring about, minorities, black people, LGBTQ people, Hispanics, and all of that, but it's not. It's about caring about other Democrats. So I'm not a fan of that. And I don't fall into their neat little mold, so they want nothing to do with me. But even in so doing, they seem to sort of recognize that individuals exist. There are individuals out there who do not conform to their stereotypes of what a trans person should be. And another thing I run into a lot as far as stereotypes go is the overwhelming assumption by people that if they call me he, I'm going to flip out. I really don't care what you call me. I am from Mississippi, dude. Being called he is like the least bothering thing I've ever been called.
Yeah, I'm sure you've heard worse.
I don't prefer being called he, but my preferences do not dictate your speech. Your preferences dictate your speech. My preferences dictate whether or not I want to have anything to do with you. And if you consistently attempt to get under my skin, eventually I'm going to want to not have anything to do with you. Even though, as many people have learned, my skin is pretty thick. I can put up with a lot of BS from someone, Dunker, before I just go, I'm done. I am totally done.
You did not just call out Dunker right on the air.
I did. I've done it before, and he knows I will continue to do it. And he's still one of our best supporters.
Isn't he still a patron on Patreon?
He is.
Oh, my
He will listen to this show as soon as we put it up on the podcast Monday afternoon. It will not be the first time. My.
So, yeah, I guess you don't have to entirely agree with us to be a patron.
No, I like Dunker. I do. He's a cool guy, and he seems to be pretty decent.
He seems to have a real hang-up about the existence of trans people.
Oh, I know he does. That to me is, I mean, incels usually do. Is he
an incel?
I think so.
I've never had a reason to get into his sexual life or lack thereof. So I wouldn't know.
Well, to be fair, neither have I. It's not something I sat around wondering about, but people have tails, right? And misogyny and anti-trans mentality is a really good way of pinpointing somebody as being an incel or being alt-right. There are three main characteristics they seem to have. They hate women, they hate Muslims, and they hate trans people. So, to varying degrees, but the hatred of trans people is so ubiquitous that it, more than almost any other indicator, is almost a one-to-one correlation between people who hate trans people and people who are alt-right. Now, I don't think that Dunker hates trans people. I think he just... hate would not be the right word. He just does not approve, which is a far cry from the people like Chris Cantwell who actually do have obsessions, genuine obsessions. And I called him out on this on Free Your Talk Live because he posted this article where the word... well, it wasn't even an article. It was his homepage. The word transgender or transsexual, I don't remember which it was, it appeared like hundreds of times. And I don't have it in front of me right now, but if you did a search on his site, just on the homepage, just on the front page, it yielded like hundreds of results.
Okay, that's going a bit far.
Yeah, this qualifies as an obsession, my dude. I'm sorry to tell you this, but it is an obsession. Well, this has been the Call to Freedom. We got distracted a little bit with individualism and collectivism, but we love interacting with our DLive and Twitch chatters. You can check that out at dlive.lrn.fm and twitch.lrn.fm. This is the Call to Freedom, but don't go anywhere because Free Talk Live is coming up next.